personal and supportive, and we all care about each other, and we obviously are colleagues, but nobody wants to see a colleague going through a hard time, and they have done an absolutely amazing job at sort of working with flower shops and doing all of the pieces that they do. And I don't even sometimes I hear about it after we regularly meet and sort of debrief and talk about different events, but they really have just taken it and just ran with it, and it's been unbelievable. So another thing that they did, again, we had a staff member that was going through a challenging medical situation, and part of the Sunshine Fund, but outside of the initial donation, they raised over $1,000 to help with medical expenses, and that's a good chunk of change, and obviously very appreciated by that staff. And then in addition, this past summer, we had a former MIW staff member, community member. Her family was involved in a pretty tragic car accident, and they sort of took it upon themselves, even though no longer worked for the district, but still part of our MIW community and MSAD 51 community. They started a GoFundMe, which raised over $26,000 for the family, and I was just brings tears to my eyes even talking about it. So my reason for coming up here is to really celebrate Deb and Vicky. They are amazing humans and amazing people, and just the amount of time that they volunteer and sort of put into making tough times just a little bit brighter for our staff is incredibly appreciated. So that is the MIW recognition for tonight. So happy to answer any questions, but
I don't have a question, but I sort of a comment. At Portland High, when I taught there, I actually ran the Sunshine Fund. I didn't know that, it was a thing, the name. We thought we made it up, so sorry. But I'd love to reach out to them, and if we had a few florists, of course, it was Portland, we had a few florists who would give us discounts because it was teachers' education. So I'll get back in touch with you to find out how I can reach them. And
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Sure, they're doing great, but that might be a tip.
Yeah, no, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Corey, this is something that's super near and dear to my heart. I feel like I've been on that receiving end 3 times, and so Courtney and I try as often as possible to give back. So how, if can we or anyone else kind of contribute to this moving forward?
That is a great question that I don't know the answer to. That's something I'll have to get back to the board, to you about, and I'll talk to Jeff and Scott, and we can sort of talk through that. But so far, it's definitely just been like an internal staff, organic sort of process, but I'm happy to explore that and see if that's even an option. So that's super sweet of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward, and especially the recognition for Vicky and Deb and their contributions to being able to have this program MIW and how creating that caring community. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I think we'd love to hear how, if others want to contribute, even if it's just, to have gift cards around when this does come up, so then it's not just the staff who feel like they always need to support it if there's other opportunities.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thanks, Corey. We're live? All right. Right. Well, thank you. I'm glad we were able to work. Moved. Thank you, Tim. Meeting minutes. All in favor for approval? 2020 with our 2 towns. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Christina. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Annika. Any questions or comments? Great. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, so now we're moving to our public comment. The board welcomes and recognizes the value of public input. To ensure public comment is fair and orderly, we follow procedures outlined in our board policy BEDH, and we ask that all members of the public do so as well. We ask speakers to use the podium when making their comments. We do have a 3-minute timer. Please state your name and town of residence at the beginning of your remarks. And as a reminder, the public comment is not a time for discussion, Q&A, or debate between board members and speakers. So I'd like to welcome anybody who wishes to speak for public comment. Okay. Okay, it's in and out. Okay. Great. Would you like to? I think it's.
In and out.
I've got other things to say. First thing I noticed, I didn't notice this before, but Mr. Valenti voted to put it separate, as a separate vote. Thank you, Mr. Valenti. Second thing is talking about the North Yarmouth members of the school board. Your town voted the whole thing down. I suggest this is going to, I get accused of being sarcastic or snarky sometimes, and this is not meant to be, but you have to remember that you are here voting and operating for your constituents, not the school. You don't work for Mr. Porter, you work for your constituents. I question whether the North Yarmouth delegation here has their finger on the pulse of their constituents. They voted no. All right, on to other things. When I thought about voting yes or no on this, and I can come up with only one reason to put it on with the building, for the convenience of the school and the school board, to make it one bond, not two, not separate them. I can't come up with another reason. There maybe are some, but I don't know what they are. I can come up with many reasons to take it and split the two votes. It isn't even close on a decision for me. Now, I sent out an email today. I don't know how many of you saw it. It was actually to TIG on the town council responding to her. And it's in the paper today. 2 of our neighboring towns in Greater Portland, South Portland and Grey New Gloucester, were thoughtful enough to their constituents to make the vote on artificial turf separate. Both of them turned it down mightily. South Portland was 56% to 44%. Grey New Gloucester was 75% to 25%, 3-1.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate your time.
I'm cut off.
Sorry, we do have a policy, and that
I'm
is
gonna
in
come
the
and talk
policy.
about that stuff sometime.
Yeah, and
This is ridiculous. This is not fair to the voters in this town.
it can go to the policy committee, can take that up, a review of that policy. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, so now we are going to move to presentations.
One data source that tells the story. And students, it's a snapshot of the school district, and in this case, the previous school year. The data points that it comparison point, 234 students today. So we're up more students, and we've been up more students every single year for the last 10 years. 435 faculty and staff last year, 2,544 parents and guardians. That's because many of our parents and guardians have multiple children in our district. 4 schools, 3 buildings, 2 towns, 1 campus, and 1 and only Ranger Nation. At the Mabel I. Wilson School, we have 737 students, pre-K to 3. At Greeley Middle School 4-8, we have 843 students. Of course, that's split between 4-5 and 6-8. And then at Greeley High School, 611 students. Again, these are last year's numbers, enrollment numbers. In terms of our staff last year, 435 staff members. And this will be an annual report which we have on our website every year. And starting tomorrow, this new annual report will be on our website. There's an annual report drop down that you can go to, which is about us, and look at all this information. And there's a lot of interactive information. For example, our instructional staff is just about 76% of our total staff, and the other 24% of our staff, you can look at these numbers. Transportation is 5.5%, for example. Food service staff represent just over 3%. Facilities is just under 7%. Administrators, just over 3% of our staff. Administrative support, which is office and clerical, just over 4%. And you can kind of play around with this and see where our 435 staff fall in those 7 areas, staff areas. Our highest educational degree, we have 205 staff members, or this was last year's numbers, that have a master's degree as their highest attainment. 133 have a bachelor's degree, 11 have a doctorate, and 2 have a certificate of advanced study, which is halfway between a master's degree and a doctorate. And again, this whole report will be up on our website starting tomorrow, and you can interact with these numbers. I'm not going to go through all these numbers. There's a lot of data points here, and you'll notice that there's a reference to the prior year in smaller print underneath all of these numbers, and that's the year before, which would be the 2022-23. Again, we're going back a year, so then we go back a prior year from that. So these numbers are generally about the same as the previous year, just a little bit below in some areas and a little bit higher in others. One good piece of information that you can look at, that the number of students taking 1 or more AP and IB courses was up from 42% to 45% last year. And then students taking 3 or more AP or IB courses was up from 13% in 22-23 to 14%. So both numbers are up. Just means that more students are taking upper level courses at the high school. These numbers fluctuate from year to year, often depending on the students that are graduating as well. The graduation rate, for example, in June of 24, which was last year, was 97%. The year before that was 99%. We see our graduation rate anywhere from 94 to 99% most years. I will say that even that 97%, we have a pretty good track record of getting very close to 100%. We have students who will graduate a few months later and they're not counted in our graduation counts if it's after August 31st. The state doesn't allow it, but we do have students that will graduate in the fall. They'll be working with staff. They don't necessarily physically are coming to the high school, but they're finishing up a credit or a half a credit that they just needed to graduate and get their diploma. So we tend to get pretty close to that 100% most years. So I'm really happy about that. A lot of kudos to our guidance department at the high school, school counselor department at the high school. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on state assessments because Mari Trebelcock, who's the Director of Academic Services, will be coming to, I think it's the next board meeting, either the next one or the one after. And she'll be giving you a thorough report on state assessment and local assessments. So I'm just going to really fly by tonight very quickly. These are percentages that are at or above grade level, and this is the state assessment. And again, this is an interactive report. So online, you can hover above and see where we are trending on math, reading, and science, which is the 3 areas of the state assessment. For example, in math at Mabel I. Wilson School, grade 3, 84% of our students were at or above grade level, 78% at 4.5, 70% at 6.8, and 71% at grade 10, which is the only grade that's tested at the high school. for the state assessment. So just kind of interactive, and I just realized that just went off the screen. See if I can get back up there. There we are. Okay. And then, you know, same thing with reading. Again, you can kind of hover. You'll see that grade 3, and again, this is information data from last year. 76% of our students were at or above, 86% 4.5, 86% in 6.8, and then 89% in grade 10 at the high school. And reading we have been working very hard on as a goal, as a strategic priority, in order to get those numbers up. Same thing with math, although we have switched math programs at the 6-8 level, and we also switched elementary not too long ago. So we're still building up to those points that we're hoping for. Science scores were down. They're down statewide. There's a new assessment that was used last year for science, and we're not exactly sure. Mari's been digging into the reasons why our science scores are down, but again, that was a statewide drop, and she'll explain that as well. A lot of it probably was the new assessment. Again, you'll get a lot more information. The iReady assessment is our local assessment. The iReady assessment, I think, is more reliable in telling our student growth, because it's considered a criterion-based assessment, which just means that we are measuring students' performance against state standards. The state assessment is actually a norm reference test, which just means that the test is measured against other students who happen to take that test across the country, which is largely the NWEA. So for the iReady, these are actual standards that we are holding students. Again, those standards stay the same from year to year. So we've been using the iReady for many, many years, far more than the state assessment. And I think it gives us a pretty reliable bunch of information. We also have anecdotal and archived data that goes all the way back. So you can see it for reading at Mabel I. Wilson, 85% of our students are proficient, percent who are at or above grade level. At 4.5, 73% for reading, 68% at GMS 6.8. And in math, 77% for Wilson, 74% are at or above grade level at 4.5, and 67% at GMS 6.8. And again, we feel that this is more of a reliable predictor of performance because we've been using this particular assessment for a long time. Again, Mari will be giving you a lot more thorough report on all of our assessments over the last year at the next meeting. So again, just another way of looking at our data. Our average daily attendance went up last year from 94 to 95%. We saw those numbers climbing incrementally post-pandemic. So it was nice to get back to the 95%, which was more in our normal range for our district prior to the pandemic. And in terms of race, there's a student or a district student demographic breakdown by race and gender as well. And again, this is information that you can dig into on the website. Other enrollment data in our district. We track all kinds of data, and there's a lot of data points that you can look at here. We're up, for example, in alternative education. We have more students accessing our Broad Cove Academy and basically as part of our Pathways program. We have 20 students last year who were participating as opposed to 14 the year before. We had fewer students attending Paths last year, but again, these numbers go up and down and they fluctuate from year to year. We've had as many as 40-something students attending Paths in certain years. 43 students were involved in silos last year. That was down from the previous year. We had a few more students homeschooled last year. Again, this is all prior year data. We had fewer students going to private and charter schools last year, and we had more students coming in on superintendent agreements. than the previous year, but we also had a few more students going out on superintendent agreements. And that's just an agreement between two superintendents to accept a student that is not a resident student. And there's criteria that we use for that. Other information or data that I think is really telling, and again, this gets into more of the logistical parts of our district and some more detailed data. Our athletic participation was up last year, and again, this is a trend post-pandemic. We're just seeing incrementally kids returning to athletics, and I think it's actually higher. I know it's higher this year already, just looking at the fall season comparison, but again, this is prior data. Special education services were up 13.4% versus 12.5% the year before. We had fewer restraints and seclusions. Restraints and seclusions are the lawful way that we work with students who are acting out or might need some adult assistance to make sure that they're within control, and all of our staff that do that are trained to be able to do that. But we had fewer students in restraints and seclusions last year from the year before. We had slightly fewer students who are on what we call a Section 504 plan, which is for academics and medical. Just means that they need extra help in those areas, or they might have a health plan that they need to access. Our truancy number was down a little bit, which is good news, trending in the right direction. Our truancy rate has been far below 1%, which is great. We had a few more suspensions of students in grades 6 to 12 last year. This is the number of students that were suspended, not the number of incidents. We had 19 students last year, 15 the year before. And we have seen this trend over the last few years of risk assessments, which are, if a student is posing any sort of safety issue to themselves or to others, we get permission from parents to undergo a safety assessment with our risk assessment coordinator. So we had 49 of those risk assessments last year as opposed to 39 the year before. These are strategic priorities that were from last year. I won't go through them. I think you're all familiar with them for the most part, but just as a record in the annual report, we list those. Again, this was a separate presentation that was given last winter on the annual stakeholder surveys from last year. We'll be conducting these surveys again as we do each year, and we start those surveys in January, and we'll be comparing that data, and I'll be providing you the data a year from now on that. But just as a highlight, overall satisfaction on those surveys for students in grades 3 to 5 was 75%, which was down from the previous year of 92%. We're not really sure why that was the case. Usually the 3 to 5 students are always in the 90s, and for some reason they weren't last year. Students in grades 6 to 12 remain the same, 55% overall satisfaction. When I say overall satisfaction, there's a number of questions that they answer, and we just divide the percentage by the satisfaction responses that we get in all those questions. Staff went up. They were at 40% in 22-23, and went up to 52% last year. And then parents and guardians stayed the same at 86% both years. And then I won't go through the areas of satisfaction or needing further study, but I will point out that the areas needing further study, several of them are actually strategic priorities this year, so they'll probably look familiar. We have a very good response rate. I have to say this is very consistent from year to year. To get 45% of all of our stakeholders, 2,425 people answering these stakeholder surveys every year is actually a very high percentage. So we're very thankful to all of our stakeholders for participating in that. This is our gross budget, again, FY24, not the current year. This is previous year, just over 47 million. It collected just under 15 million in revenue. Again, these are old numbers. And then the tax effect in Cumberland was 2.87%, in North Yarmouth 2.6%. Those numbers, tax effect, have been pretty consistent, for the last several years, keeping those as low as possible. New feature. Look at it. I have one other feature that, again, I'm going to give lots of credit to Melissa for, because she is responsible for. If you remember, we have on our website a large chart of data that we have been collecting over the last couple of years, and it goes all the way back to 2015, so we're looking at almost 10 years worth of archived data. It's hard to look at that chart, and I said one day to Melissa, it's kind of, I'm looking at the chart, but these numbers are just kind of all over the place. Can we put this in some sort of a system that makes it easy for people to view it and visualize and be able to read something and dig into it with a little bit more? So this is the product of a lot of work from Melissa on this, and I just want to give her a lot of kudos. Basically what it does is it takes a lot of the data I just showed you and it breaks it down into charts. And I'm not going to obviously go through every one of this. This will be accessible on the website starting tomorrow. But it looks at things like iReady, reading and math. We just talked about that, and how that parses out over the last, in this case, since 2017, with some of the data, depending on what data points we've gotten how far back. Most of it goes back to 2015 that we have data points on. But you can look at AP exams, all these pieces that I was just mentioning in a more visual way, and I think it's a lot easier to access it. MyHIS data, for example. Pulled out a few key questions out of the MyHIS data and did some comparisons to the, we haven't had a lot of MyHIS data because during the pandemic it wasn't administered. But the information that we have, we took those questions such as feeling safe or being bullied on school property, cyberbullied, depression, substance use, suicidal ideation, and just looked at those data points and put them in a visual so that people can look at our information and really understand it in a little bit easier way. So other categories, enrollment, again, a lot of this information I went through, but it's just now in a visual. So you can look at our enrollment over the last 10 years. You can look at average daily attendance, pathways, students involved, going to paths, homeschool enrollment, superintendent agreements, private school. I think you're probably getting the point. It's pretty much all the data that I just presented, but in hopefully a more visually acceptable way, so you can look at it and really understand it. Again, staff with master's degrees, just kind of seeing what's the trend over the last 10 years with having an advanced degree in our district if you're a staff member. Student service data. A lot of data here, graduation rate, free and reduced meals. People always look at the free and reduced meals and say, what's going on here? Why is your district got almost nobody on free and reduced meals? Well, there's a story behind that. There's a story behind every single one of these charts. Mm-hmm. The story behind free and reduced meals is the state now provides free meals, breakfast and lunch, for all students in the state of Maine. And when they started doing that, parents did not fill those forms out as much. So our numbers are probably closer to where they were 10 years ago, if I had to guess, in the 8 or 9, 7 to 9% range. But things change. There's usually a story. Suspensions, expulsions, you can see where our numbers have been over the years, last 10 years, chronic absenteeism. Again, just looking at this information, risk assessments, they've gone up and down over the years. Truancy, I think we've made a lot of inroads on truancy over the last few years. Looking at bullying incidents, going all the way back to 2017 when we started collecting this information more consistently. You can see we've actually fallen in that area in a good way, going in the right direction. And restraints and seclusions, as I mentioned. But again, you can dig into all of this. I think it's just a lot easier. And again, I just want to thank Melissa for doing an amazing job putting this together. And again, this will be replacing that chart that is on our website. And I will say, actually, while I'm talking about the website, I just want to say, in case you haven't been to our website recently, we've made some subtle changes to our website. Thank you to Donna Green in our tech department. There are some new categories at the top. So some of them are the same, some are different. But they're hoverable. I like to use the word hoverable. It's easy to navigate. We used to have a drop down that was kind of clunky. It was kind of visually clunky, and it was also keyboard clunky. Now our website is a lot more seamless. You can just hover, go down to an area that you're interested in. The annual report, for example, this is last year's annual report. We have not replaced it yet. We'll be replacing it tomorrow. But you can go and do that, and we've added some new headings, such as human resources, and some of these are still being built up, some of these new areas. Safety and security. You want to go right there and find out safety and security. If you want to find out what I wrote in the newsletter 3 months ago, have at it. Here it is. That's actually not a new feature, but just the fact that we are trying to be responsive to what people have told us about our website and trying to act on that. Going to the schools is a lot easier, being able to drop into a school. We have a new section called curriculum. It used to be really hard for people to find curriculum because it was buried under all kinds of different areas. So Mari Trebelcock has been working with Melissa and Donna to make sure that we have a whole curriculum area, and we're going to be building this out. This is not done, but there's a lot more areas that are consolidated under curriculum, so people don't have to go searching for curriculum and assessments and programs that we offer. Oh, and look, the board. The board drop down is actually a lot more robust. We've made it easier for people to search for things. It used to be you'd have to go to one page, board of directors page, and try to find everything. Now you can go to the board calendar, and just without having to search for the board calendar, there it is. Board videos. You don't have to search for the board videos anymore. There it is. Meeting agendas and minutes. Instead of finding that under some link at the bottom of a page, now you can just go right there. It's very easy. If you want to learn about the budget or the policy manual. Board committees. There we go. We've got all the committees right here for you. Just click on the one you like or one you're interested in and go right to it, and there you go. It's got its own page. So a lot of work has been done on the website, just subtle changes. The One Campus project now has its own tab. We know that will be around for quite a while. So if people don't want to, where is that One Campus thing? Okay, here it's right at the top, and you can just hover. And there's we're building this one up as well, but artificial turf has got its own area. The One Campus project alone has got its area. So I just kind of want to introduce that as well. Again, subtle changes, but I think we're trying to be responsive to people who want to find information a little more quickly. And so anyway, that's the annual report. Just a few more features to add. But I want to give a lot of credit. We have some great work that's been going on to get this, I think, easier for people to read.
Yeah, I think that's more than a few new features. That's a lot of new features and a video and the website. It's really impressive of
Very impressive. Yeah.
how many updates that have made to make this information accessible. Any questions, comments?
I have a question I shouldn't ask. I'll be sorry I asked. This new feature, which is lovely, note summary after the meetings, the, policy committee, building committee. So should I be submitting
No. So this was something that was just started with the One Campus project and the turf field.
Okay.
So just those two committees, because we knew that that was of high interest.
Okay.
And so after
Great.
each meeting, no, the note summaries were just something that was talked about with those two groups.
Great, glad I asked. Thank you.
I was going to actually bring this up in communication later on, but we do want to get a rotation going of the committees, maybe once a month being featured in like the district newsletter. You know, there is a board section. It was great this past week to have the feature on the work of the building committee, and I'd like to get into more of a habit of having committee updates rotate through the district newsletter as well. So maybe, you know, curriculum twice a year would have a feature
Okay.
in the newsletter, but
Sure I didn't miss a memo.
no memo. You just have to write the memo.
Well, and I'll add an exciting part. After you write it, like Christina's ready to write hers, we would put it right up. We can also put it not only in the newsletter, but just put it under the committee. And just, you know, so those write-ups from the chairs could be on the committee page. So go to curriculum and see Christina's latest write-up. There you go.
But we haven't asked you to do it yet. so
Okay, all right, I'm
You
good.
didn't miss anything.
I'll flag
When-
that.
when you do
Thank
it.
you.
I just had one question real quick. Do we collect data on the early college program?
We have collected that information, like dual enrollment and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A
and-
lot of the, I know a lot of the high school students, and we're doing the college classes on-site.
Right.
versus,
That's something that that's a good suggestion, Sarah. We used to collect that data and include it in the report, and we have not done that for a few years. But that's something we can look into getting that information. That's good.
I think that's really something to be proud of.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, we used to do that.
Well, I would say probably most members of the board don't even know what you're talking about because we don't have older kiddos to know what that program even is.
So with 4 daughters, I've got quite a bit of experience with it. My number 2, who graduated in 2016, was able to take a course. She was physically at USM, and I want to say it's like a 100 level course. So I believe it was college writing, which is great. And my daughter Caroline, who graduated in 2021, she was at Paths, but she was also took her math, which she took calculus and another course at USM. So it was a great opportunity to practice college before college. But Caroline actually ended up graduating with with a year and a half of college credits from high school. And our senior now is taking, I believe, 2 college courses this semester. She's taking Spanish and college algebra and college writing this semester. And I don't know about next semester.
Yeah,
But I
no,
need to
that's we should be we have that information. We have the data. We'll just include it in the report.
And what's kind of nice is that the college writing is online, so she's, having those responsibilities and checking in on chalkboard and making comments on other people's writings and having, those responsibilities. But then at the same time, she's taking college algebra here on campus. And it's just a nice opportunity.
No, it really is. And we have articulation agreements with colleges who allow us to do that. So students
And you
can
get the
participate.
credits.
Yes. Yep.
Like, you get to take the credits with you.
That's right. Yeah, it's great. And I appreciate that because we used to track that and we just didn't We haven't done that. We got to put that in. All right, thank you.
Kim?
I had two questions from the annual report itself. I do not recall, and it may be typical, but the proficiency levels going down as the kids age. Is that typical?
In some areas, there was an area, I forget which one it was, where it was going up. It trended up. But yes, that can be typical. I think it was math that actually trended up. Let me just grab it. Are you talking about the state assessment, Kim?
For the iReady.
I think it was more the iReady that,
Okay.
Yeah,
that I found a little bit interesting, maybe not concerning, but just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the iReady, we only, we're looking at 6-8. We don't do high school for iReady. But I think that's more typical of the iReady assessment itself. It does get more difficult. One thing I will note about 6-8 is we flipped the math program 2 years ago. And when we did, we always find our scores when we flip any program at all go down for a couple of years. It's just, you can research it. There's a lot of research about that.
Well, and this isn't so much about going down from a previous year. This is going down as they progress through the
Right.
school. Okay, I just
Right.
want to make sure I
And-
said that.
But typically,
the right way.
6-8 is a little bit higher than that when we look at assessments. Mari can talk more about that when
Okay,
she's
yeah.
really dug into this data quite a bit.
Yeah, okay.
And when she gives you a report, it would be a good question for her.
Yeah, okay, I'll ask her. My other question had to do with the risk assessments.
Yep.
Do we think that went up because Sandy Hook Promise was implemented last year, or?
It
was-
might have. I mean, I think it was just a general trend that we've seen more safety issues raised with kids. I think there's just a lot more awareness too. Kids
Well, that's what I
are
was wondering.
reporting other kids, and
Right, right.
and actually, even with the Sandy Hook promise, I think we've had 3 tips in the last 10 days
Yeah.
this year. So, you know, people are speaking up.
Yeah.
And these are legitimate issues. We've had a great cooperation with the police department as well. They are part of our responses. I see those tips that come in, and then we follow up with safety risk assessments as well. But
Yeah.
most of them are not even through Sandy Hook. They're just issues raised by parents,
Okay.
by staff, or a student is going, you know, and saying, I'm worried about the student.
Oh, okay.
Or a student is saying, I'm worried about myself.
Right. So,
and, yeah.
will that be included as we look at Sandy Hook Promise? We'll be looking at, you know, whether more risk assessments were
I know
done
that some
because-
have been done because of the tips that have come in.
Yeah,
In fact,
because
we've had several.
I mean, I think, it looks concerning that more were done, but when you think about maybe it's just that more were reported,
Right.
finally, more awareness. So I think that could be really helpful to.
A lot of awareness has come up. I think,
Yeah.
you know, I give a lot of credit to the program like Kyle Cares, which is,
Yeah.
it's okay to talk about
Right.
this. It's okay to disclose. In fact, please do. And our social workers are also very in tune, our school counselors. I think just staff in general are more aware.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more awareness.
Yeah.
And we've really prioritized this over the last
Right.
couple of years. So I'm not surprised that the numbers have trended up. Our risk assessment coordinator, we have more than just the numbers I presented, but those are the numbers that the risk assessment coordinator actually conducts himself.
Okay.
And so he's taking more of the more serious ones. Some of them are ones that are ruled out by social workers, school counselors, et cetera. But if they have a concern that's greater than that, then it would go to a formal risk assessment, which we call a CSTAG. Now it's got a new term. And so he actually conducts that more formal assessment.
So I have a couple of comments. First, as someone that has been beating the drum of more data visualization and access, this is such a great step in that direction. And kudos to Melissa for sure, but kudos to you too, because I mean, it's leadership to display this, to prioritize it, and we can tell it's a real priority of yours, Jeff. So thank you for sharing it in this way.
Melissa and I said, this is actually Tim's project.
Yeah. Well, Since I have dug myself a hole, I will always volunteer my services to help her in any way that I can. But
she enjoys doing
she's doing
this.
great.
Yeah.
Mari might come with this. Is it possible that we could just put on her radar? Because I'd like to see the expected growth targets of some of those assessments. And
Yes.
for next time, I'm sure she may have already planned on doing that,
She
but
will
just
be.
in case.
Yep,
Okay.
she will be.
And then Kim, to your point, we usually see that at the later grades in iReady because it's just not as good of an assessment at that level. So that's not shocking at that. The other thing I wanted to know is how is your leadership team discussing this data? Like, what does that process look like? I'm sure you have somewhat goals and benchmarks around this. Like, it's nice to see how it compares to 2023, but how do you guys discuss this internally and then decide, yeah, we're on target for that, or this is where we want to be?
Honestly, we haven't done as much data review as we used to, and it's something that we've talked about getting back to. We definitely do a lot of state assessment data review and the iReady. A lot of it internal, and we also have school staff teams that dig into that data on their own at the school level. But in terms of looking at the entire annual report, obviously the leadership team looks at it, and if there's anything that we need to discuss, we discuss it. The MyHS data definitely has been a conversation with the leadership team. So it's really whatever the priority is that tends to be the data that we're looking at more. But in terms of a comprehensive, let's dig into, why we have more risk assessments. If it's not something that we're, it's something that we're paying attention to, that at that point, if it's not a priority, it tends to be more situational.
Okay.
But they're definitely, the leadership team is part of this annual report, making sure that they review it.
Thank you.
I can follow up and confirm that Mari's going to go over the details. We were originally going to talk about assessment and this information in our curriculum meeting, and you guys preempted us with, she's going to visit, November 21st is the day she's planning
Yes.
to come.
Yeah.
At least when I
So it's
spoke to
2
her
meetings.
last week.
Or
so.
actually, this is November. So.
But yes, Tim, she's going to address that specifically. We avoided it because we knew you would be interested. Yeah.
And I told Mari this was just a flyby for me, and this is just part of the whole annual report. And then she will dig in a lot more with you.
Same, yeah.
Anything else? Great, thank you. So now we're going to move to items for action. I think the first set is related to some new policies, and so I'm going to ask Annika, as the policy chair, to put forward a motion.
Yeah, so I'd like to move these as a group. So I move to approve all policies as presented. That's
Thank-
specific enough.
That's great.
Thank you, Annika. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So Annika, would you like to just talk through what's being presented again
Yeah.
in the second reading?
Yeah, so as you all might remember, so all of the policies that we are currently voting on, this is second read. So actually looking at adopting these policies at this point are policy changes, and these came to the board for first read at our last meeting. So we've had a chance to discuss them once already. And just briefly reviewing, the majority of these policies are related to changes. So all except for one are related to changes in the Title IX requirements at the federal level. And of those policies, one is new, which is related to pregnant students, and that is the last of the grouping there, 6H. But again, these are all related to Title IX requirements, and the policy committee had met with Julie Olson and Mari Treblecock and reviewed these policies as a group because they were all related, and really see this as kind of bringing our policies in line with the law, so supporting our staff and carrying out those responsibilities. But certainly if people have any questions at this point, please let us know. And then the other policy that is not a part of the Title IX policies is KI, visitors to schools. And as we also previously discussed, The policy committee had started working on this last year. It hadn't been updated since 2000. And one of the significant things that the policy committee wanted to ensure here was just that we were covering everyone who is not a student or staff member in the schools with this policy, and ensuring that we're protecting the integrity of the educational experience even as we have visitors in our schools.
Great. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Kim.
For policy, by the way, this is a lot of work, so thank you to the committee. The policy ACAA R2, student sex discrimination. I just had a question about Julie Olson being the, okay, so she's the Title IX Coordinator Affirmative Action Officer,
Yes.
which means she's the one, the way I read it, and forgive me if I'm reading it wrong, but ideally someone would go to her with a complaint directly.
I can answer that.
Okay.
They can under the law, yes, very much so, and that's why she's listed here. They also can go to an administrator, any administrator in the district, who will then connect that person who's complaining with Julie, or they can also process it and then, get Julie involved.
Okay.
But so it's either direct or indirect. It can be either way. It can go to any staff member,
Okay.
actually, in the district. They would refer to Julie eventually, or get the information. But she oversees the process.
Okay. I was
That's
just
it, yeah.
wondering like how that's communicated to students, that if you wanted to go directly
Yeah.
to her, but maybe it's not
For example,
important to communicate that.
in the new pregnant student policy that we have, there is a direct a student who's pregnant does have to be given that direct information to contact Julie.
Okay.
And that's actually in the policy.
Okay. Okay. I missed
but
that. I knew I was going to miss it somewhere. So
If somebody
thank you.
wants to file an AAO or a Title IX concern or complaint, they can do that through a building administrator. They can do it with someone else who would then work with Julie. Julie is the person who oversees all that. They also can directly contact her if they want to.
And how will they know that? I guess that's
Most students, I would say, and I'm looking at our two students, probably will go to their school counselor or administrator of one of their administrators, and in that case, the staff would be the ones working with Julie on their behalf.
Okay.
That's typically how it would be handled.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of the policies as presented? Thank you. Unanimous. Okay, now we're going on to the lease purchase. Could I have somebody read the motion?
As finance chair, I'll take that
Thank
one
you.
on. Okay. We're down. There we go. I move that we approve the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of Bobcat L95 Compact Wheel Loader in the principal amount of $125,084.78 be adopted in form presented to this meeting.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Megan. All right, so please present. Are you going to be doing that, Scott?
Sure. We presented at the Finance Committee that we would like to purchase the Bobcat loader for a number of reasons. I asked Dawn to come this evening to basically explain the use of the loader and help answer any questions, but we definitely have a need for the piece of equipment with the snow that we get on the campus, being able to pile snow at certain times, being able to wait to truck it off campus instead of having to subcontract. That's one of the things that would help us out in this, and not having to subcontract as much, along with the piece of machinery being used year-round, not just for the snow removal. So I guess at this point, Dawn, would you like to talk a little bit about the loader, and then we can answer questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for us, the loader is not a new request. We wanted one for a few years, needed one, I'll change that. But for us, every storm is different, so it makes every winter different. Right now, with the equipment we have, and with the Bobcat, the tool cat that we have in the tractor, Those are primarily sidewalk machines. We have a lot of sidewalks. And should be used primarily for a whole storm on the sidewalks. But because we have larger areas, but not large enough to fit the trucks on, we have to use the Bobcat, one of them, for that. So the loader would take care of that with a pusher. And plus the town comes up with 2 big loaders, which are too big for these other areas. So they do primarily the big parking lots. We do everything else. So as it stands now, so for some examples on times, I do behind the middle school, and I do the kitchen side of the middle school. The kitchen side alone takes me a little over an hour. Even for a 6-inch storm or above, I have to hit it every 2 or 3 inches because it has to be back dragged. So it's not just plowed, and then there's nowhere to put it except for up on a banking. So the loader, it takes me over an hour. Each time I have to hit it, the loader would take 10 minutes. Out and back in the playground would be about the same. Takes me about an hour. And it would take the loader 10 or 15 minutes to hit out back. So that's where all of that time is. A good part of our staff that does snow removal are bus drivers as well. So we try to plan the time to get as much done before they go drive bus. But it also means with all this extra time, they may be here at midnight, leaving at 6:45 to get their bus, driving the kids, coming back to help clean up. So they're up a long time. So I'm hoping to be able to cut that time, at least to get them a couple hours sleep during a storm. We do all of our own sanding and salting on the campus. And we have a truck. The current equipment will not load the truck. They don't lift high enough to load the truck up. So most nights when it's maybe not a plow storm, but maybe we got ice, the town may have gone home at midnight, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We're coming in at 3 in the morning to sand and salt. There's nothing down there for us to load with. So that's where, I had mentioned during the other meeting that we have to hand load. We hand load, we have 1 load already on the truck when we get there, and it takes, 4 or 5 loads. We end up going down as a group and shoveling in that truck, which takes over an hour to do. The Toolcat, again, we have to do it. The Toolcat does all the sidewalk sanding. We hand load that. So with the loader, we can actually go down. It's no fault of the towns for not having a loader there or whatever. But their loader won't start under 50 degrees. So, and they're not gonna just leave it running all night for us to go down and use it. This past year, they were very good in trying to get something for us, but. So that's where I had mentioned to the Finance Committee, the injuries, possible injuries. Those parts are just possible. We haven't got hurt doing it. We come off of that pile going, wow. And it's like, I made it, but. So those are just some of the things. Summertime, wood chips for the playgrounds. We've hired it out in the past. Unloading trucks. When we get pallets of paper, paper's very heavy. We can lift with the Toolcat onto the ground, but we can't move it very far. With our building going out back, tractor trailers will no longer be able to come out to us. So we're gonna have to unload in front of a school. And having something big enough to actually move it out of the bus circles would be helpful. Now, one thing Scott had mentioned, so as we plow now, in just my areas that I plow, I can only go so far with the truck, and then I have to make a pile. So I'm taking up 4, 5, 10 parking spaces in all these little areas. So then it becomes a very immediate need to get trucks up here to remove it. And with a loader, we can just have one big pile, load them up, not take all the spots, maybe not have to haul it off at all, or, you know, at least minimize that. Hiring and removing the snow in a big storm is $18,000. So a couple of big storms just paid for the loader for the year.
Thank you. I'd just add a couple of things to that too, if you don't mind. So the town of Cumberland really has the loaders mostly for taking care of the school campus. Their loaders are aging. And so I was talking with Chris Baldock, and he mentioned that they would be replacing those, but they would also be looking to the school for probably making a contribution to the loaders as well, because they're used on our campus. So whether we purchase this or we were going to make a contribution to other loaders, it would be a cost that we would have to experience. The other part is that the cost of the loader is about $29,000 a year when amortized over 5 years, and that would be the budgetary effect on that. And certainly, as Don just mentioned, a trucking off the campus is $18,000. Plus, if you take into account some of the, some of the labor savings that we would hopefully see, and then just the opportunity cost of being able to have school open at times where you might not be able to if you're waiting for. If the town had gone home or something had happened or we were right up against a storm, having this piece of equipment, we believe would help us in those situations and in late start situations as well. We might, rather than cancel school, it might be a late start. Or we might not have to have a late start if we can get the snow and other things moved. This would also be used around the campus year-round. It wouldn't be a piece of equipment that would just sit idle for the rest of the months. As Don mentioned, the paper. Another option is it's very difficult to get the playgrounds cleared of snow for the students to be able to have recess in the wintertime. And that's something that we take a lot of traffic on because teachers, the students, they all want to get outside in the wintertime. And without a piece of equipment that really turns, that really moves, and really can push the snow up and get rid of it, that makes it difficult as well. So, so that's why we're recommending, recommending the machine is for all those reasons.
I know Jesse has some questions. So this also went through Finance Committee, is
Yes.
that true? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, so one question is just, I looked at all the attachments. Like, I think the loader looks amazing. I'm just wondering which attachments you're looking to get. If you know.
On the sheet that we had for the sale sheet, so, the bucket, of course, the heavy-duty forks, and then the push blade for snow. Everything else fits between the toolcat and this machine. So the broom and everything else would go on either one. So we wouldn't have to buy a bunch of extra attachments.
Great. And then the other question I just had was, maybe finance can answer this. I was just wondering where we're gonna source the Bobcat from, and if we're getting the best price we can on it. I think it's a necessary thing to buy, but it's an expensive thing. So I'm just wondering if
Absolutely.
where we're getting it from.
Yeah, right now it's with Jordan Equipment Company, and I know that, Don, I don't know if you want to speak to that some. We had a number of places that we had checked on pricing, and I believe the pricing that you got was favorable because of also relationships that we have.
Right, yeah, for the price of the unit itself, this is, we got competitive for the size of the machine. So we did go out and get competitive prices. This was the least expensive, and least expensive also because of the attachments we wouldn't have to get. So not just the machine itself. But we deal quite a bit with Jordan Equipment. The owner of Jordan Equipment is a taxpayer here. Our salesman is a double taxpayer. He has 2 houses in North Yarmouth. So they've treated us very well. One of the questions that was asked is the L95 as opposed to the L85. The L85, which was last year's model, is no longer being made. And yes, there is a $10,000 difference. on that sheet, there's a $9,700 kind of friends and family discount to account for that $10,000
It's called a
Difference.
partner discount.
partner discount. So they did take that difference off for us. So we'd be paying for, getting the L95 for the L85 price.
Well, yeah, so I want to flag for the finance committee. So in relation to the turf field, we've been looking at co-ops and different purchasing options and everything. And so I did notice that Bobcat is a approved vendor for one of the co-ops that we can use here in Maine. So they just give you 24% off of the price of the machinery and any attachments. So, I mean, maybe it's worth going with a local vendor for service and to have all those things. But, yeah, because I was looking at it for the turf stuff, I just wanted to flag it as, for large items, it's maybe worth just making sure we're, getting the best price we can. But again, service and relationships, it's like if it needs to get worked on, maybe we want to buy it local and factor that in. But just wanted to make sure I'm flagging it since I looked at it.
Christina?
So I have one question. It's kind of for the building committee in a way. In the garage, the new garage, will this fit? Are they accounting for any new equipment we need for that, or any potential turf field equipment or attachments we need? Does that, have you talked, or?
It will fit in the new garage.
Okay, all right.
Thanks. Annika?
So I was just wondering, you mentioned contributing to town loaders. If we move forward with this purchase, would we not be contributing then to, or not needing to contribute to town loaders? Is one question.
I would imagine that we would not have to contribute as much because we would have this loader on the campus. We may, if they have 2 loaders, we may have to contribute to 1. I don't know that yet for sure. I was just talking with Chris, and he mentioned that the loaders are aging, and if they don't need to keep a loader here on the campus and utilize it, I would imagine that this would help reduce that or eliminate it.
And then, was this something that was included in our budget already, or how does it fit into the budget?
It's not included in the current budget, but the first lease payment would start in the new fiscal year and be part of the next budget. So it would be part of next year's budget.
And so the timing of this now is so we can get it for this winter?
Yeah, it is, and the way this would work is that if you notice the document that I provided is what's called a reimbursement resolution, which allows us to purchase the machine, get the machinery now, but we don't need to enter into the lease purchase until many times what we'll do at Finance Committee is see where we're gonna look at our fund balance at the end of the year. So many times we won't even enter into the lease if we see we have a fund balance at the end of the year that we can basically not have to buy the lease, but buy it from our balances at the end of the fiscal year. So, there may be something that happens in a salary line, there may be something that happens, that we didn't need as much in the energy lines, there may be something that happens along the way through the year. So why enter into the lease purchase if we don't have to? So we get the piece of equipment. We do the same thing with technology leases in the district. So, yes, so that would be the reason why.
And presumably, what we have budgeted for will be less, because we're not going to have contracted services for the rest of,
I would hope that we
24,
reduce the
25.
contracted services that we have to expend.
yeah, so.
Absolutely.
So some of that money will
Yes.
then be a savings
Yeah.
currently, even though we're not paying for it,
I would
the
say it's
first
going to
payment until
depend on
next year.
just how much snow there is this coming winter. So, but I would hope that it would eliminate some of that as well, yes.
And maybe save on some of the staffing that you've
Some
had
of the
to pay.
staffing
I'm assuming
and,
overtime.
The
on-
I
overtime's
would
a
think
big
that
one.
overtime would be helpful, but also just the fact that, much of our staff are bus drivers who are working facilities as well, and it would be nice to be able to get them in here, clear the snow, get them back out, and get them back on the buses in the morning after some rest. I think it would save time.
And I do know that we, for the next joint meeting, shared services was going to be the key feature of that meeting, and to discuss, all the ways and opportunities that we can share between towns to save us money. And so
Yes.
I'm hoping that this comes into that conversation if there's other ways that we can share.
Yeah, we actually have quite a list that we put together that actually Chris Baldock and I did kind of a cost comparison of the shared services between the community. And you'd be surprised once you put that list together between rec using the facilities in the school district, them providing snow removal, us providing custodial services, you know, with the town. There are a lot of shared services that we're doing already, so.
Yeah, and snowstorms, one of the joys from living where we do, you can't, when it snows, everyone wants to be cleared at the same time, and being able to prioritize some of our needs is important.
So I 100% see the need, and we talked about it last night. And it's amazing the amount of manual labor we're still doing. And I think my concern comes with the shared services and just some of the question marks that we still have around that. Like the fact that we don't know if we're going to have to pay for part of that big loader, or the fact that we haven't had that shared service meeting, where I do think that, you know, the amount that we clear benefits the town too, because the town does use our facilities. We have to clear all the time for our rec department, as we were saying. So I kind of would feel more comfortable just figuring out, like, I want us to have this internally, but it seems like we would be throwing away a big portion of what we have in our deck, in our hand, essentially, before we go into that partnership meeting by just approving it now. Like, my understanding is if we approve now and we purchase it and then we go to that meeting and we're like, okay, how are we going to like share services? Well, we've already purchased this, right? And so I'm a little hesitant not knowing all the information about like what that shared service could look like, and whether or not we would have to pay into like a bigger loader, which it sounds like they need to replace, and we still need, because the small loader is not going to do our full need.
And again, I don't want to put too much emphasis into that contribution, because that hasn't been decided yet. It hasn't been a commitment yet. This really has a larger effect of us being able to push snow to the areas we need to place it, lift it, place it out of the way, and be able to reduce some of those contracted services that we're paying. I think that's some significant savings there, along with the others. So I'm not seeing those as jointly connected as you are, Tim.
Yeah, and to that point, there's been ongoing conversations, I think, between the communities over the past few years, just to continue to have these conversations where we can see opportunities. And I would like to think that, you know, if we're investing in this, this is then a leverage point for the district for also, I guess, credit to what some of the things we're sharing with the town. So I see it like in our favor going into that discussion.
I would just add that there's been, you know, I know that the last couple of winters have been a little more mild, but it doesn't mean that this one won't be. We know Maine. But I remember there have been a couple of winters not too long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when there was so much snow, and it took a week before we could actually get contracted services of the town up here. And I just remember people were really complaining because we had just mountains of snow everywhere, and we lost a lot of parking. And the kids liked it because they liked being on the snowbanks, but there wasn't enough parking. And I remember it just being a real issue. And I just remember one year we just couldn't get anybody to do it because there was snow everywhere, and everybody was trying to clear it everywhere in town. And it was literally a week before we could get some of those piles done, and even that didn't really make a dent. I mean, it got rid of some of it. But I think this is an opportunity for us to be able to do more of that internally. And as the district grows and we add another building, this is going to become so much more important, especially concerns with parking that go on in the district. And I do worry about our facility staff, which includes our bus drivers and all of our facility staff. I called Don in the morning because I have to call him to find out what's going on this campus at, you know, in the wee hours in the morning. And they've already put in like a whole day's worth of work. And out in some pretty treacherous weather doing manual labor, a lot of it's manual. And I do worry about that. And I do think this will help reduce workplace injuries and make it safer for the district. So when this item came up, when Scott mentioned this to me, what was it, a couple months ago, that the idea of maybe trying to get this done this year, I was like, ooh, really? And then the more we've talked about it, the more I'm really convinced it's a necessary item. Not that I'm trying to, I know Tim, I think we all know the necessity of it, and I totally get it. But I just think having this internal tool is really important. And I know it's a lot of money, but I really think it's necessary for the district.
And Tim, I'm 100% with you that if the town comes back and says we need money for a new loader, that I mean, as finance chair, I'm going to push back heavily on that, because I don't, based on what Dawn has presented and the many, many questions we've asked, this should be enough for us. We shouldn't need shared services, and as wonderful as shared services are, there's the competition during a storm that it just, you can't get around that. So I feel very confident that this will be what we as a campus need, and I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I am absolutely not in favor of paying for a shared service that we're not going to use. So, Dawn, does that?
The shared services have gone very well with the town, so I don't want it to seem like we're like spending a lot of money to the town and not getting a service, because we are getting a service, and it is working well, okay? And it has worked well for a number of years. We've had a great relationship there. And again, these were just preliminary conversations, as I was having conversations with Chris Baldock about, what do you think about a loader, Chris, and you know, where we're sitting right now and us having it on here. And there are many times that we could actually load trucks and be able to get snow moved as well, so. If we have
I think some of it also is the labor shortage that does happen on both sides with facilities, but also the town staff and not having people that can actually come up and help as well. I mean, they have the same challenges with labor shortages at times too. And so I think all that comes into play. But I think there's always a tipping point where you say, when are we getting too big for continuing to do what we're doing without investing in another, you know, whether it's personnel or equipment. And I think we're at a tipping point with our growth as a district.
And how many years?
Didn't they use,
Sorry, I was just saying, I know it's a 5-year lease. How many years do we expect to get out of the equipment?
I would say at least a 10-year useful life out of that. We've maintained, and it's one of the questions that I'd answered. There were a number of questions that came to me over the past few days, and there were some that I didn't get to today, so I'm sorry about that. But we keep our equipment for a period of time. So we purchase it, we buy it new, and then we keep it maintained and we take care of it. And so, for instance, we have a 2013 tractor right now that's still running and still operating, and is still functioning and still useful to us. So we keep our equipment for quite a bit of time. So if we bought this over a 5-year period, expensed it over 5 years at say $29,000 a year, we're paying for it as we're using it, and then at the end of that 5 years, we have something that we own.
Well, I think that's another shared service with the town that we really appreciate, is the mechanics back and forth and being able to, you know, work on different equipment. I know that we help and that they help, and just trying to maintain equipment.
Our maintenance crew actually does most of that on our equipment.
No, I know, but there's
so
occasion I know that we
use the town,
and they use us.
They've got their elbows in the oil.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember if the amount came up, but I know in the finance meeting it did, because we had to rent one last summer, correct?
Correct.
And it was substantial cost.
Yeah, so a rental, and for a winter rental, it's even more, of course. But the rentals are generally, right now, between $3,700 a month and $4,700 a month, depending on the company. Comes with nothing. 5-year minimum, 5-month minimum rental, which you pay up front. Some will give you a bucket, some will charge you extra for a bucket. None of them provide a snow pusher or anything, so that's still an extra cost.
I think when we looked at it, it was over $44,000 a year to rent it, and it's $29,000 a year to lease purchase it. About $18,000 difference.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor? Okay, those not in favor? we're going to move to our authorization for the general obligation of bonds. Kim, as the finance chair, do you want to do the official reading?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
I lost it. All right, I move to approve that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Issuance of $53,492,000 in General Obligation Bonds to Finance a $53,492,000 school construction project be adopted in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be filed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christina. All right. So, obligation of bonds. Do we want to?
Can we take it? So this authorizes the district to, it's already been voted on by the voters of both communities, but also the board has to authorize the financing. This provides the flexibility of doing the BAM financings. It authorizes the hiring of the bond counsel and the finance, our financial advisor, and it authorizes Jeff as the treasurer to do those items. So that's really in a nutshell what it is to authorize us to move forward with that.
You need our signatures tonight, too.
I do. I will need, I'll have to start this at one end and just get everybody to put their signature on this piece of paper tonight.
Okay, any questions?
And just I'll add that the ban, there's been some, we had a little bit of a change in when the ban is going to be occurring, and it will be occurring in January now. Financial advisor met with finance committee and or some other folks and just talked about that. We actually we'll probably get a more favorable rate after the holidays. And so that was a good piece of advice for us to keep our rate as low as we can.
Great. Okay. Any questions? Great. All in favor? All opposed? I got the word right that time. Okay, thanks. Unanimous. And make it all the way down to get those signatures. Okay, so now we're moving to the superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report tonight. Mabel I. Wilson School, they had their grand event. This is always a well-attended, very well-attended event. One grandmother even came from Vermont. I'm sure there's others that have come from other distances, but that was one that we knew about. But just a couple images from, and just a lot of thanks to the PTO. PTO and Foundation 51 are so involved in the life of our school community in so many ways, and this is just one of the PTO's events. Greeley Middle School 4-5 students in Mrs. Gervais and Mrs. Rothbart's 5th grade classes. We're excited to work on a service learning project. Service learning is something that in education we've been doing, I think, as long as schools have been open, but we never called it service learning. It just means that students are actually, educating themselves around helping their own community. And so Socktober, instead of October, was created, and this is, I know this is not the first year they've done this, it's been a few years now, and just raising awareness about homelessness and people who have no housing. And socks, believe it or not, in the winter are the #1 need for homeless folks that are homeless. And so they were able to collect a lot of things more than socks and deliver them to the Maine Needs, which is an organization that takes in donations and distributes to Mainers in need. So great job to the students all those 5th graders, about 50 students were involved in that. Greeley Middle School 4-5 as well. Claire Harrington and Melissa Feist's 5th grade, I always say Feist. She changed her name. Feist's 5th grade math wizards went to Mabel I. Wilson School, so the older students, working with the younger students and kind of dazzling them with their math knowledge with some math tricks. And so that's why they're wearing all those wizard hats. They are the math wizards, helping the younger kids. At Greeley Middle School 6-8, Barikas, chocolate cake, and more. 7th grade students completed a project in October, which involved researching a food item that is culturally important in Judaism. Students were asked to create a 1-minute slideshow presentation and either make or purchase their food item to share with the other 7th grade team. So Osprey and Katahdin students worked really hard to learn about the history of their food, and many recipes were shared. It's a good cultural experience, and also a historical study as well. Greeley Middle School 6-8 also, this was the first year that our 7th graders went to a different place besides Cow Island and Ripple Effect for the first time, I think, in at least a decade, maybe more. And trying out a new place. This is the 4-H camp at Bryant Pond. A little bit different program, but still an overnight experience for our 7th graders this year. So I heard it went well. I did not attend this particular event, but I did hear that things went fairly smoothly and the weather cooperated. Each year, we have a number of students who make it to the national level of the National History Day competition, and students in Katie Cassesi's social studies groups. She's a teacher of gifted and talented students at the elementary and middle school level. David Gilbert, who is at the middle school, did a documentary that got the attention of filmmaker Ken Burns, who ended up talking directly with David. And we have a number of students that just do really, really well in this competition every single year and are given awards. But I don't remember a time when we had a documentary that came in 3rd in the nation for his age group and category. That is really unbelievable. This is a huge event. And just congratulations to David and to all of the students who participate in National History Day. It's a great project and a great program. At Greeley High School, the students were embracing homecoming spirit. So we haven't had a meeting for a month, so this is a little bit dated, but we had all kinds of different days that the high school students participated in, iconic duos, trios, group themes, etc. Also at the high school, students participated in the mock election, which is organized by the Global Citizenship class. Sarah Way and Julie Dowdy are the teachers and advisors, and we had over 70% of our students participating in the mock election. Rangers Rock Edition. Greeley High School was awarded $4,000 from CalCares, which is a regional organization for mental health. And because actually we were told that Greeley High School may now be the #1 most active CalCares chapter in New England, which is primarily where this organization is based. So congratulations for this very, very active student club and organization. It's only been around for about 2 years. And also Rangers Rock season finals. We are at the end of the fall season. Go Rangers, boys and girls cross country qualified for the state meet. 3 runners qualified for New England's: Rowan Berry, Tate Harvey, and William Cool. And in football, they'll be hosting the 8-player regional final this Friday versus Lake Region at 7 o'clock, right here at Hutch, the Hutch. Be one of the last events at Hutch, I think, for the season, actually, for a while, as we get other pieces going with the turf field. At golf, Joe Hansen was a co-champion of Class A individual, and he also qualified for New England. So congratulations to all of those students. And also in the season finals, Go Rangers. So just last night, girls and boys soccer are the Class B South Regional champions. It's really terrific. I know there were 2 games in the last few days, and did amazing. The boys over Yarmouth 1-0, and the girls 2-1 in overtime versus Cape. So congratulations to all these teams. Really terrific. And that is the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. A couple questions. So is the documentary available to view?
You know, I often see the projects myself, and I haven't seen this documentary yet, so I'd like to find out too.
Yeah,
I'll
because I
ask.
saw the article and I went searching around and I couldn't locate it.
I will
so
find out.
That would be awesome. And question, I don't know if you know this. I watched on the live stream the games yesterday in Freiburg. That was great. It's my understanding that we aren't eligible to host those championships because we don't have a turf field. for soccer, do they choose locations that have a turf given that it's so late in
I
the
don't know the answer to that.
fall?
It does sound right, but I would have to confirm that.
Okay.
Actually, Sophia's looking at me right now. Sophia, do you know the answer?
I don't. I was just
I was
looking.
thinking, you look like you were pensive,
No,
so you might know.
but I do know, like, we all the state, like, games are, like, held far away at, like, really big,
Okay. The state championship.
yeah, so, like, I think also space is an issue
Mhm.
because we don't, I mean, those are just really big games, and
Yeah.
a lot of people come, and I don't think the Hutch would be able to hold that many people, so.
Yeah, I thought I heard, and maybe it was lacrosse, but there's certain sports that we wouldn't be able to host
I can
any
find
of
out
the
from David.
regional
Yep.
championship because it has to be on a turf field. But it was just, I think that's an interesting consideration for some
Yeah.
of these.
I'd like to get the answer to that, so, yeah, thank you.
So that's really exciting, and I think they'll be back in Bangor on Saturday.
Yes, they
Yeah.
will be.
Any other questions for?
Did you have one, Megan?
I just was gonna say they're playing Saturday. Boys and girls are playing up in
If you
Bangor
can't
on
make it,
Saturday.
you can live
Okay.
stream it.
The mock election, is that just presidential? Asking for a friend.
Sophia or Katie? Yeah.
It's not just
Is
presidential.
it state too?
Yes.
Are the results somewhere? I
Yes, they are.
keep going. I just
You
curious.
won. I think you won, Christina.
Any particular
Posted.
reason?
Posted by the office, not online. I'll talk to you after.
Okay. I think I have the results in an email.
I think they are posted in the lobby too, so you can see, like,
Yes,
you know,
they
Christina,
are.
70%, you
in
know.
like big bold letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen them posted online, but yes, I heard they were in
Yes,
the lobby.
they got
I'm
announced.
good. I'm just curious. That's all.
Mornings ago.
Great. Okay, so moving to our students who we haven't heard from for a little bit. We're excited for your reports. What's been going on?
Okay, so Sophia took all the cool ones, but with homecoming and stuff. But for sports, we have so much going on right now. Soccer boys and girls are states bound. Unfortunately, that will be in Bangor, but we're making the trip on Saturday. And I was at Freiburg last night too, watching both games, and they were both really, really exciting. And then, of course, we have the regional football game tomorrow, so there's going to be a lot of late nights under the lights, and that'll be great. And then, of course, the mock election, which was just really cool to participate in, and they also had like voter registration there too, like, for the real thing. So that was great, and I saw a lot of kids getting registered for that too.
That's great.
Thank you.
So I did steal homecoming because seniors do put it on, so it's only logical. But that was a couple weeks ago. We had like the big long week lead up that we put on. We had individual days like with each themes, and I think that was the first time that we'd had like a homecoming week in a few years, since we haven't had one that while I've been in high school, but because normally we have a spirit week in like March, April. So that was exciting. It was really nice to be able to get together Thursday before homecoming with like the whole school in the gym and be able to have like a fun assembly instead of like a different type of assembly. And then homecoming was nice. It was in the gym, which people weren't too excited about, but it was a lot. People enjoyed it. I don't think they really minded it that much. November 1st, a lot of early decision deadlines were passed. You can check out the Greeley Guidance Instagram page for all of my peers and me submitting our college applications. And then today we had a little Veterans Day slideshow for Monday during advisory, and there were a lot of teachers that like none of us knew were veterans, so that was really cool to see. Even Mr. Gray, one of our principals, was a veteran, and I don't think like anyone knew that, so that was cool. And then we'll have our next meeting before, but GHS Drama is putting on Mamma Mia the weekend of the 22nd or the 21st, so that is coming up. Get your tickets because they're filling up. So that's the report.
Great, thank you. Yes, they did add a show, so we're hoping there's 4 shows. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. They're about half sold right now, so if people are considering going, I would encourage you to go look and get your tickets soon. Thank you. All right, Finance Committee, Kim.
So we had our first meeting, I don't have the date in front of me, but primarily it was to discuss our first financial quarter ended the end of September. So October is when we get those numbers. I believe everyone on the board was given that, but I want to point out that it is also on our website. So piggybacking off of what Jeff was showing us all about the website, if you go to the board and go, you can click on budget. And I believe there's a link if you click on the Finance Committee, it will send you back to budget if you want to see that. But under budget, you can see all the previous years. And if you click on fiscal year 25 budget, right at the top is the Q1 report. It also includes a letter that Scott attached explaining why perhaps one category has more of a percentage or more amount of funds remaining than perhaps has been entrenched. Is that the word? Why am I blanking?
Encumbered?
Encumbered, thank you. Yeah, I have to get the end. I haven't got much sleep the last couple days. Anyway, so encumbered are numbers that we've committed to, and then there are other numbers that we, are somewhat arbitrary, such as gas for buses or oil. But if anyone has any questions about any of those categories, please reach out. Please reach out to any of us on the Finance Committee, and we will get you that answer. We were very pleased with where our first quarter already looks. Everything is exactly on track as what we would expect. So we felt very good about that. You've already heard about the loader. We've already voted on that, but that was another big topic of conversation, as well as just sort of onboarding us and understanding what the rest of the year will look like. We are thrilled to have Scott staying through July, so he will be part of our budget process. And that even though we're accelerating the budget process a little bit because Scott had already put that in motion, it does give us all just a little bit of breathing room on the fact that we don't have to have it done by the end of the year. So the last thing is I was able to join the finance manager position interviews yesterday. We have 3 candidates, and that was really interesting to dig in and meet our candidates, and we'll have an update possibly by the next meeting, the 21st. Yeah, I know we're looking to get this done, so we're in good shape. We had some very qualified individuals. So that's it for finance.
Great. Yes, and we're very excited to have Scott with us. Is it until July or through July?
Through July.
I was like,
okay.
If you ask his wife.
Made the commitment to July 31st in summer projects.
Okay. Great. That'll give us more time to transition and onboard the new finance position. So we're grateful for that.
Can I just ask a quick question? This is the first year that you've had something like this available publicly on the website. And I would totally commend you for doing this, because this seems like a really transparent, open place for people to go and get their questions answered, which has been, obviously a big sort of point of concern for our citizens. So this is really fabulous. Nicely done.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Melissa.
You and Melissa and Scott.
Great. Yeah, it's great to have it there. Thank you. Policy, Annika.
Okay, so for policy this evening, we have 3 policies on for first read. So we will have a chance to come back to these for second read. But for first read, the first 2 are financially related, and Scott joined us for the meeting where we discussed these. DJH, purchasing and contracting, procurement staff code of conduct. This is a revision of an existing policy that was last updated in 2017, and we are revisiting to meet our federal audit requirements. In this policy, there's expanded language from employees to staff members, which includes employees, school board members, and their agents. And there's a focus within that on conflicts of interest, gifts and solicitations, and disclosure. So that is updating for our federal audit requirements, and again, with some expanded language there. The other financially related policy is DJT, travel costs in relation to federal awards. This one is new, but also needed to meet our federal audit requirements. And let's see, one of the notes here that I made is really has to do with necessary, reasonable, documented, so that travel costs that are related to these federal awards would be all of those things, would be necessary, would be reasonable, would be documented, and would be consistent with other district travel policies. And if there is any conflict between what is in this policy and our district policies, that the more restrictive policy prevails. So those are the financially related policies. The other policy on for first read is JICK, bullying and cyberbullying in schools. Again, this is an existing policy, and what we needed to do with this one really was add an appeals process that was not previously included, and is required under the law that we would have an appeals process to appeal whether action has been taken or not in these cases. So this is to outline what that process is in accordance with the law. So if there are any questions on those, I would be happy to take them. And I guess the other update that I would provide is that our next meeting is coming up next week on Thursday, November 14th. Our schedule has been thrown a little out of whack by some scheduling changes that came up for my family. So I appreciate people's being able, I think, to work around those from what I've heard or not heard, at least so far. So next meeting is Thursday, November 14th, and one of the items that will be on the agenda then is Policy FF, which is around naming of school facilities, where we will kind of dig in more around that current policy and what that might look like as we, are working on the One Campus project and moving forward with potential need for naming.
I just have a question on the bullying, cyberbullying, the appeals process that was added. I'm just trying to read through and confirm that that's just to the superintendent. It doesn't come to the board. I know some appeals come to the board, but not this one. It's to the superintendent. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of policies where the superintendent is the final, and then there's others that it can be appealed to the board.
Okay.
So it just depends on a lot of policies. Dealing with students, student matters or whatnot will often rest with the superintendent.
Rest with the superintendent.
There's a couple notable ones that can go to the board.
Okay.
But
and is this like typical that?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, this is typical.
Okay. All right. Are there questions? All right. Thank you. Okay. Where did I? Oh, thank you. I was like, where are my papers? All right, Tim, school building.
All right. So the building committee has met twice, I think, since our last meeting. We finalized our approval of the site plans and then began discussing our mechanicals with Bennett Engineering, who is the preferred partner of Steve Blatt. Our old friend Denny, who chairs the Cumberland Sustainability Subcommittee or committee, came to our initial review of the HVAC system based off of just very baseline plans of our concerns about what our HVAC efficiency and cost would be. And he left feeling very good about the design proposal, so that gave us some confidence as well. But we still have a lot more questions to answer and more due diligence to be done. So we've rolled out a mechanical subcommittee, which Danny will be a part of, but it also includes content experts within our community. Sean's there. We met last night for the first time to go over the actual proposal, but also asked for a variety of options in anticipation that our town and community would have concerns about our energy sources. So we are definitely not done with that, but it's taking up a lot of conversation time. The architects, I guess, also held a number of meetings with staff in recent weeks, so they've been updating their designs, and we have requested kind of a budget update and a cost analysis, and we should have that, I believe, somewhat soon after Thanksgiving. I think the mechanicals make a big part of that. So we have to approve some of the basics of the mechanicals before we get that, but they have scheduled time for the cost estimator shortly after Thanksgiving. Our next meeting is 11/20, which we expect to talk about the turf then, but if that discussion isn't ready, we'll continue with mechanicals, and I think we will probably still continue to talk about HVAC, but we'll move into plumbing and electrical as well. So that is where we're at.
Great.
I need to make one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank everybody, and I don't know how many, if Jesse has the same feeling about the people that he's worked with. The people that you guys picked and applied are just amazing, and they're subject matter experts that you just wouldn't think you'd have in your community, and it's been really impressive what they brought to the table, and it's been enjoyable to work with them. So just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, and that attests to how hard it was to choose, because we had some really qualified candidates who live right in our community, and they've been a fantastic part of the committee meetings I know that I've been able to attend. So thanks for noting that. All right, Jesse, artificial turf.
Let's talk turf. So at our last meeting, a number of things. There was a student survey that went out because we wanted to know from students who play on various turf fields at any number of other schools which ones they ranked highest. And so we got the results from those. Top choices included Cape and Falmouth. Both of those are field turf products, the company Field Turf, and a number of other fields that students like are field turf fields as well. So that is a vendor we is high on our list. A couple things nobody likes is the organic infills that I was so keen on us using, because they're more abrasive, they can be more slippery, and they freeze if the weather gets cold. So they're better for the environment. And
Correction, we like them, they just freeze.
yeah, we like them. But if the point of a turf field is to be able to play on it more often, it doesn't meet that. So maybe better in places where it doesn't freeze. But so there's that. Another thing, we've been looking at lots of different turf options. So there's some that have the shock pad underneath, which you have to have if you have an organic infill. Most fields installed around us do not have a shock pad because you do not need one if you use crumb rubber or EPDM little pieces of rubber, because that's bouncy and you don't need the shock pad. So there was a lot of discussion about, do we go with a shock pad? If we're not going to use organic infill, we don't need one, blah, blah, blah. And we eventually came to a consensus on just the basic type of turf we think we would recommend. Get ready, Tim. So a dual fiber turf. So that's a type of turf that has both blades of grass that go straight up, which would be the type of field you would want if you played football, and then another one that's sort of like textured, which is the type that you would want if you played field hockey, because they're opposite types of fields. And so if you have a field that you want to play everything on, you have both types together, so it's a hybrid. So football won't love it, and field hockey won't love it, and soccer and lacrosse will probably like it just fine. But because it's a field for everything, it's sort of the multi-purpose option. Our recommendation was EPDM fill, which is basically rubber that's not from recycled tires, and sand. No pad, because you don't need it with the EPDM. We talked a lot about the lines. Do you inlay the lines? Do you paint the lines? And our recommendation was that you inlay the soccer lines and that everything else you paint. And there's pluses and minuses either way. If you have 4 sets of lines on a field in different colors, it can get confusing. If you have to paint things, you need to be sure you have a good grounds crew that can stay on top of painting them. But I have faith in the grounds crew here that they can do that. And there's specialized equipment we could get that could help with that. Yeah, so we talked about, there's machines you can get that can, it's like a Roomba that'll paint the lines on for you. So then it's just, they end up perfect, yada, yada. Another thing we talked a lot about, and this wasn't a criteria that was set forth by the school board, but was, so PFAS free and recyclable, obviously, but the microplastics issue. And so the infill of choice that we were recommending is a microplastic. It is just little pieces of rubber. So you guys need to know that is what we are recommending. It's the most cost-effective option that isn't recycled tires, so we are trying to be responsible and not pick the most expensive option, but it is little pieces of rubber, so that's just something we're going to have to accept if we go with that. But another issue is that the fraying of the blades of grass over time, little pieces of plastic can fall off of that if you have a low quality product. So the higher quality product you have, the less little pieces of plastic fray off. So we are very keen to have a higher quality product so that we are not breathing that stuff in and polluting the environment and whatever. So that's another recommendation we have, is a higher face weight product, slightly more expensive, more durable. And so, we go with the EPDM and not a fancier fill, but we try and get a higher quality field that will also last longer. So that's another important thing. We also noted that there is a product out there that has no infill at all, but it was only released this year in the United States, and there are no installations in New England, so we didn't feel like we wanted to blaze the trail and be the first school to install it. But we did note that that is an option, and I'll also note that in the European Union, they are banning all microplastic infills starting in 2028 or 9. So either using organic infills or these infilled options that's gonna be the future if we catch up to the EU at some point, because they don't like the microplastics. But we didn't want to be the guinea pig of New England to install it when we know there are products that students like to play on that are nearby us that work and would be within budget. So trying to juggle and balance all of these things. And then one other issue is you can get, and similar to my comment about the Bobcat, there are these co-ops that have pre-competitively bid, meeting all the specs of what we would need, that have transparent pricing, and all of the vendors basically said you should go with one of these co-ops because it's easier and more straightforward, and you can just pick what you want based on what's there. But we're having a disagreement with Drummond Woodson about whether we can utilize those. They think one thing, and I happen to think another. So we're still trying to get it cleared up. But the vendors have sent me a list of schools that have used these co-ops. Falmouth this year used one, and so if they can do it, I don't understand why we can't. And until Drummond Woodson gives me an answer that's acceptable, I will keep arguing about it. And then a few other tidbits. We're going to put a fence around the field, catch fencing at the end so that balls don't go into the neighbor's yard, because that's been an issue. We decided it's probably worth paying $1,000 for the dark skies spec on the lighting package, which just gets us to know what we would have to do to have that dark skies, not less light pollution. And then we would know what the price differential is, and then we could decide if that's worth it. If it's in budget, do we need to raise extra money? Is it worth raising extra money to not pollute the skies with too much extra light? A number of other booster opportunities, including if we want a fancy field logo, that's like a $30,000 upgrade or something. Do we want the fancy disco light show package? These are all things we didn't think we should include because they're bonus sort of things, and we're trying to be fiscally responsible. But if they're nice to have, maybe somebody wants to pay for them, so maybe we could fundraise. An improved sound system's been mentioned. That's not in the current project. A Jumbotron, upgraded scoreboard. So we talked about those things. They would be nice, and maybe we can fundraise for them. And then the last thing I'll mention is all the dirt, and we're going to talk about this later, obviously, with arsenic, but we're going to have to move all this dirt, and it's going to have to go somewhere. So creating a berm somewhere and being thoughtful about where we put this dirt and encapsulate it and plant it with things. Maybe we can make a little hill people can sit on to watch games, or make it so that all this dirt can provide some sort of benefit to the campus and not just be a nuisance or whatever. So we talked a little bit about the berm and where that might go with the landscape folks. So we've got a meeting on Tuesday where we're going to try and drill down to the last few details, which are the recyclability and the PFAS. 2 of the vendors we're looking at recycle in-house and 2 do not, and we need to decide if that's important for us, because the ones that recycle in-house, you know they will do it, and the ones that contract it out, the contractor maybe lies and just dumps it in the landfill, which has been documented, and people keep sending me those articles. And then the PFAS, similarly, we asked for testing from all the companies, and we have it, and so some companies are like, you should test at parts per trillion, because we can give you that test, and some will give you at parts per billion or million, so they're all PFAS-free according to their tests, but they all do different tests, so you know, we need to really get into the details of that and, you know, what we're gonna accept or whatever. So, yeah, we'll fill you in, but we're, I think, close to being there, and building committee can decide to move things forward, and then you guys can all decide whether we put shovels in the ground and put this field in.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. And yeah, to that point, the next phase, so they have one last meeting that then they will be presenting to the building committee, which would come to the board for a vote.
Yep.
Okay.
With regard to the experimental no-fill
Yeah.
fee, is there an opportunity there? I mean, as you said, we don't want to be the guinea pig, but is there an opportunity to be a pioneer?
Well, here's the thing. So the artificial turf committee, the consensus was not to be the guinea pig. I would recommend we do it because I think microplastics are horrific, and it's a field full of dump trucks full of little grains of rubber that are going to go everywhere. Like, they don't have PFAS in them, so they might not pollute the groundwater, but it's still gross from my perspective. But like, the EU is moving forward with banning these things, and the company that makes these has installed them for several years in Europe, mostly in the Netherlands. So it's like, it works. I talked to several schools that have installed them down south. The football team loved it. The soccer guy was like, it feels weird and squishy, and I think the players slip more, but maybe they don't. I don't know. So it's not full of organic infill that would freeze, so it shouldn't have that problem. But also, you know, the coaches and athletic director want something that they know works. I would love to be on the cutting edge and say that we are being more environmentally responsible. I'm on the LCC, so I'll let you know there's a town councilor who is going to attempt to ban microplastic infill in the ordinance subcommittee. So if they do that before this goes out, then we won't have that option. So, you know, there are people that really dislike the idea of any, you know, even if it's not tires, any infill that is microplastics. So,
well,
yeah, there is an opportunity, but like, I'm trying to reflect what our subcommittee agreed to. So it's like, we agreed that this is an option, but it's not the preferred one, but it is an option.
So thank you. I'm just wondering if there was any discussion as to what there might be as far as a promotion or a savings or a sponsor. If we're the ones to be the first in New England, is there anyone who would like to sponsor that? That just feels like an opportunity for someone who's, you know, looking for a better way to do turf fields.
If you know somebody who likes microplastics enough or dislikes them enough to fund it, then like, by all means, save us the money.
The
You know.
company itself would not be interested in like demonstrating that this is.
I don't think so,
Didn't
'cause
I
they-
ask that, Jesse? I think I
they've
said that
demonstrated it
exact
already in
thing
Europe,
during
so
the
it's like,
meeting.
they know it'll work.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question that I don't know if we know the answer to it, and perhaps you do? We're supposed to come forward with a recommendation, and the pad that doesn't have the little microplastic blah blah blah, the pad, as you were saying, Kim, might be a real option. Can we? I mean, is it written down in the rules that we have to give one, this is our choice, that's it? Or can we say like, well, this is an option, and this is an option, and toss it to the board? And one being the one that we've discussed, the consensus, but there's still this, you know, it's still kind of stirring, and the EU information increasing and newer. So can we offer 2 options to the board? Is there a rule we can't? We'll put it that way. I don't know what the rules are.
So, before it even gets to the board, what I anticipate at the building committee is to get like, even if it's a specific product, get that recommendation. But I'm kind of interested also in just like, these are our, this is what we were looking for. Here are the kind of the products that check it off. Here's the kind of pros and cons of this, and then here are the pros. Like we should think about and process the option, even if I'm a little opposed to it, honestly, as well, if it hasn't been in New England. But like, I think for our discussion and just knowing our building committee, who got chastised for asking too many questions, I know we're gonna want more.
Ask all the questions.
Than one
I've
option.
got all the answers. There are many options.
So yeah, I mean, I think we would want to see like your top 3 kind of things that pick that, right? Like, and see how they compare and contrast and push back, or ask questions around them, I think. Yeah, and I don't know what would go to the board in that sense. I anticipate having qualifications that we bring to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody on the TURF committee. I've sat on those meetings. I think part of what we are also balancing, as Jesse pointed out, is the students and, you know, coaches and other representation that have had a lot of experience on different types of turf. Balance that with the other concerns, the environmental concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, that will be part of the presentation. I've also, encouraged the members of those committees to come to, the building committee when this is being presented, as well, because yeah, there's a lot of things to balance. And I would say maybe the 2, one without the infill and one with an infill, and really going through those.
Is there any, I mean, it's a disadvantage that it's not around, we can't see it in person. Is there any money or opportunity to find the nearest one of those fields and send a coach, someone to go visit it?
They're all in the south. I've talked to, so I can tell you where they are.
Okay, so
They're
is
like
there money to ship someone
Alabama,
south?
and like they're all like way in the south.
Road trip.
Yeah, there's not one that's within like 5 hours drive. Like there's none in New England.
Okay,
New
so
Jersey
is
is-
there
They're
money
far-
to fly? I mean,
I think
really,
New
can
Jersey's
we-
the closest, right?
This is a huge expense, so maybe it's
We can
worth
get there.
that one airplane ticket. I don't know. Is there money?
But kind of conversely, is there, the Netherlands.
That's kind of far.
But no, climate similarities.
Yes.
Is there anywhere that,
Canada.
my cousins are in Sweden and we joke that we have the same weather. It's pretty much so within days, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Would there be a school, even though it's in Europe, that you?
I'll call Greenland, Alaska.
Yeah, I haven't been able to find one that's like in a place that's
Okay.
has the same climate as ours. But there's no reason it shouldn't work, and it has a 12-year warranty, and they have all the testing to show that it has the performance characteristics that we would want. So it's like, on paper, it looks fine. It's just nobody's played on one, and they've played on these field turf fields in Falmouth and Cape that they like, that we know work. So it's like everybody on the committee wants to recommend the thing we know and have seen and have played on, which I get. So yeah. If we want what's best for the students, that's what the students and coaches want. If we want what's, roll the dice and what's best for the environment and should work, it's a risk. And maybe it's also more expensive, so, because it's the newest, greatest thing. So,
Jesse, do you have any sense of the cost of these things yet?
yeah.
Are we
Well,
in?
so the non-infill one, I don't. The other 4 are all parts of these co-ops, so they have transparent ceiling pricing, so you can look at them, so you can price them all out, sort of a la carte. So you have to do some math and put it together yourself. But we could also just ask them to put together the pricing for us, and so yeah, we know the pricing for everything except for the non-infill one, because they're not part of the co-op, so you don't have transparent pricing for them.
I mean, could we potentially put a bid out in a way that then allows us to compare the costs? Because
Nope. No, if we put a bid out, we have to go with the lowest bidder, which is why going through the co-op would be preferable because they're already competitively bid, so it ticks that box, and then you can just pick the one you want of the ones that are competitively bid. But if we write our own bid, we have to spec it in a way that we get what we want, hopefully, but we have to go with the lowest bidder. That's what the language says, which is why I'm afraid that I'm told that some people will be unscrupulous and they will bid on things, and then you will get an inferior product that you didn't want, even though you tried not to. So you have to be like very careful about speccing it appropriately to get the thing you want, not to exclude too many people, so it seems like only one person can bid versus, like, I don't know. There's less flexibility.
So is the no infill option, is that even available through the co-op?
No, that one you would have to bid it and just say we want a no infill one, and they're the only company that offers it in the U.S., so it would be a one company bid for that.
And that's the only way to get pricing. There's no way to get pricing on it.
That doesn't, right, it seems like we should be able to find a way to get pricing.
I mean, I can ask if they'll give it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the co-op is just because you can compare apples to apples,
Yes,
so it's
right.
like you're not getting it MSRP pricing, you're getting like, this is the most we would charge you, here's the discount, like apples to apples kind of. Whereas like, I can ask 10K if they'll give it to us, but see what they say.
So aside from the pricing, which may, be significant, I have no idea, but aside from that, you'll accept that we send you 3 recommendations, like an infill and a non-infill. Yes?
Yep.
Permission granted?
I mean, I think that's the expectation. I mean, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because I didn't know, I thought we were supposed to just come forward with one, this is it, take it or leave it, and if we can say like, these are the 2 different types, and we'd recommend these,
Just knowing
these
our
would be
group,
the prices.
knowing our group, I think that more options, the better.
Okay.
Oh, we could throw them all at you.
Yeah, no,
Give you literally thousands of
yeah, no,
everything,
I
so-
would
3
expect,
options.
I think the 3 is completely random. If it seems like what's emerged is there's 2 opportunities, one with an infill, one without.
Right.
And so I don't think we have to make up a magical third one.
Yeah. And I will just say, like, we're very much relying on your experience. You're the ones that have been doing this and doing all of the work. So if it's 2, okay, Jesse, you've been doing all the work. If it's 2, it's 2, and that's better than 1. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we should come up with like yet another.
I mean, it's basically 2. Yeah. You have to pick which. I mean, the first one, all 5 vendors can provide basically the same product. It's hybrid, EPDM, and sand. Like they all provide that one. So those ones we could bid them against each other to get the best price.
Great, thank you. Okay, Christina, curriculum.
This will be much shorter. Okay, so on 10/28, we had our first curriculum meeting. Because it was the first one, we did introductions, and everyone went around and expressed their major goal for the year, something they want to know about or suggest that we pursue or whatever curriculum-wise. We went over briefly of what the committee's role is versus the staff, faculty, et cetera. We did a brief introduction and a timeline of the different pilot programs that are going on. At Mabel I. Wilson, there's basically the CKLA, which is the Core Knowledge Language Arts Pilot Program. And another group is doing the Fish Tank. Another group is doing the EDM. And 4-5 is doing the ARC Core pilot programs. And Mari explained why these different ones are being studied. Some focus more on reintroducing more concrete phonics emphasis. Others have some of that, but focus more on the literacy, and they're trying to match it up, and they're going to compare notes. They're going to report back to us with staff members that are using it, and what their experiences have been and what they're seeing in the students, so that we'll be visiting them again. So we just did a brief introduction of that, so everyone can get up to speed on the committee, because everybody's new on it, I think, except for me. But anyway, and then we focused on assessments, but again, we did an overview because we know that she's going to come to our whole board meeting on November 21st in order to give us really specific details in the weeds about results. But she went over it in general about what is done. There's the state required assessments, like the science one, that's online, NWEA, and then reading and math ones. Then there are internal assessments. A reading and math one is done through iReady. So a lot of it was just explanatory. What are the assessments that are being done and why? She explained why we do an internal one in addition to the state one, because it does take up that much more time of educational, direct teaching time. The iReady, they have found in the past, it is more reliable, relevant to our students' learnings, and particularly the results they're not immediate, but they're fairly quick compared to the state testing, which you really don't get back till like the end of the school year or even the next.
Sometimes it's the beginning of the next school year.
And then it's like, okay,
It's gotten better.
But
since it started.
yeah. So, so we focused on that mostly. Our next meeting is November 18th because of the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. Monday 3 to 4 on Zoom, and the public is welcome to Zoom in if they link up to it.
Thank you, Christina. All right, Kim, equity.
So we had our first meeting on October 9th, and it was so great to finally get together. We have several new members as well, and so onboarding and talking about our expectations for the year. It feels very different now that we have a plan in place, the equity plan. So in some ways we're redefining a little bit, or just sort of adjusting to what this committee looks like now that there is a plan. So one of the first steps is, and this will be finalized at our meeting next week, is dividing into subcommittees, which is something that when Tim chaired, this was a part of the plan to have subcommittees for each of the 4 categories of the plan. So there will be a subcommittee to look at academics, a subcommittee to look at policies, a subcommittee to look at district culture, and a subcommittee to look at community relations. Those are our 4 buckets. So we'll be dividing into that, and then that will make our work on the plan, implementing the plan, a little bit more digestible as we kind of narrow that down. And we're also looking at the frequency of our meetings, whether we really do need to meet once a month or whether we can meet a little less often. So, we're looking at that. That's about it.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Were there ad hoc committees that people wanted to talk about? I know we had a profile of a learner. Go ahead.
I'll just say on behalf of community partners, the PTO's Parent Power Appeal is in its maybe final hours even. It's slated to end tomorrow, so they are hoping to raise $20,000 to support their student enrichment, our student enrichment in grades pre-K through 8th. So definitely encourage people to donate to the Parent Power Appeal if they haven't already. And also there's a number of other upcoming events, which I had conveniently found and now have conveniently disappeared from my phone, but I will find them again here real quick. So there will be a holiday show, which is happening on December 14th, but prior to that, they are looking for submissions for the holiday show, which is for grades 4 through 8. And there's also a parent university event coming up on November 13th, cyber security. I think I actually saw that on our high school sign when I drove by this evening. So that was great to see, and encourage people to attend that and find out more through the PTO website if you are interested and have questions. And then it looks like the final thing on the schedule for the near term, at least, is November 17th. There's a Greeley takeover at the Mariners game. So selling tickets to that to support PTO.
Thank you.
And I just want to provide an FYI that I've joined the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for Tom, I guess, was our representative the last couple of years. And so, because Peter has seen me with a number of children and me attempting to coach and wrangle those children, I've taken on that time. So we meet a couple times a year, and I think next week. So if there's anything you guys need from that perspective, I'll be representing us there.
And can I add something about, I realized that I left off of my finance report, which is that the other thing we discussed was implementing the new software, which we're very excited about. And to your point, Megan, this software will also allow us to run reports that some of the community's been asking for that were really complicated right now with the current software. So I am looking forward to playing with that. And not that the finance office is going to let me like directly play with it, but I can stand there and ask them to play with it and come up with different reports. And so as people check out that website, if there's anything else that you think that we really should have up there for the community to see, please reach out.
And the testing of electronic timesheets right now.
Oh, that's right.
See, this is so exciting that Scott unretired himself to do that.
I need a little bit of legacy work before I leave.
Great. Any other updates? All right. Communications, I think as I mentioned earlier, we do want to continue adding some more content to the district newsletter, just little updates on maybe some of our committee work going forward, and I'll update the board on that coming up. But other than that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Before we do that, would it be appropriate to congratulate the young woman at the end of the
yes
table down here? Congratulations, Christina
I won the
Mitchell.
school mock election.
I voted for you.
Thank you. Yes, congratulations, Christina.
And we're sending one of us up to Augusta, which is pretty exciting.
It's very
Yeah.
exciting.
Oh, I thought you meant to like harass us up there, like questions, like.
And you'll
You
be
are the one of
serving
us.
2 roles, right? You're going to
Yeah, I'm
stay
staying.
here.
I'm planning to stay.
Somebody asked me that today, and I
Yes.
said, I think
I did check before I even
Yeah.
put in for it. Can I stay?
yes. Thank
I
you for
got to
staying.
figure out some scheduling stuff, but that's my plan.
Thank you for
I'd
staying.
like to
I
stay
know.
with you guys.
I'm
if
like, you
it's
can't
okay.
do it unless you agree to stay with us.
right.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for mentioning. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Christina. Can I have a second? Thank you, Kim. All in favor? Great.
And please don't leave till you've signed this.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Let's make
This
signing on
stopped
that.
with me.
So, Tim, do you have just a minute?
Yeah.